Welcome to No Borders with Brian and Carrie. Today what we're discussing is the topic, things change. You know, we've been on the road going on 3 years now, and a lot has changed in our lives.
Yeah, it seems like things change pretty regular. We're trying to nail this down. We think we've gotten there, and as soon as we think we're there, things change.
So now where things started for us and where they are now is really quite different than it was, that's for sure.
Yeah, it's incredible what you think might happen compared to what does happen. What we thought was going to happen was we were going to land in one spot and branch out from that one spot, do weekend trips, day trips. We would hang out for a couple of weeks, do a longer trip, but we'd always go back to that home base. That quickly, really before we even left, we decided that wasn't going to work for us. So we did a pivot.
Yeah.
Probably the first pivot we've ever done. We've done thousands since, but that was the first one. And we decided to stay in each place 1 month at a time. That's changed now too.
Yeah, and when you were talking about staying in one place, like we were going to get residency, like we were actually settling down. And that to us, I think because the idea of moving all the time hadn't really even crossed our mind. It was, you know, we were just thinking we're moving from where we've lived our entire lives to a different location. But then as we started researching further into slow travel, and was that even possible? And as we started doing the math and watching a lot of other YouTubers out there that were doing slow travel, I was like, wow, this is really a possibility.
This is something that we could do. So we started thinking about it. The research started. The cool destinations that we didn't even realize existed started happening. That ball started rolling downhill, and the more it started rolling, the faster it went, obviously. So we did the pivot, and we made some adjustments, and now we are where we're at. Now, what's happened between where we're at right this second to where we were then?
Right. Now we slow traveled and we were staying a month in a place, but then we decided to try a few spurts of faster travel, and that didn't work for us either.
No, that was my bad idea.
I
thought it would be cool.
An idea that we needed to try, and we very quickly learned wasn't for us. And when we say faster, for us, you know, we do a month at a time. We don't necessarily think we need a month at a time in a location, but when you are going, say, a couple weeks, and then you're in a place for 2 days, and then you're in another place for 2 days, and then you're in another place for 2 weeks, and then you're in a place for a couple days, that is fast moving for us. That's just too much.
That's too much. So we went back to the once a month stays. Now, Carrie just said we don't need a whole month. The last week or so, maybe the last 2 weeks, things really slow down. You get a little bit bored, but that's okay. You're slow traveling. It's okay to be bored every once in a while. Now we're thinking maybe we're going to speed it up a little bit.
Yeah, and there's a couple of reasons behind why we're going to look to speed it up, and we'll cover that in a little bit of what has brought on that change for us.
So with this travel style, no matter if it was in the very beginning or whether it is now, it's very budgeted. But how has that budget changed from 3 years ago to today?
Well, it's had to change. You know, when we first started, you know, like we said, we had set a budget before we left. We knew what we could work within and what was going to last through the years that we have left before we can start drawing on retirement. And we were coming into it right towards the end of COVID. It really, almost a year of COVID. And so everything was really inexpensive. You know, people were renting out their places because people weren't traveling. So we were getting accommodations for really inexpensive.
Right. We thought this is great.
This is great. Yeah. And the cost of living just in general was a lot less. So we've had to adjust our budget. You know, we started at about $900, and we've now brought it up to where we're about $1,200 a month.
Right. Now that's each.
Yes.
That's $900 each. So about $1,800 to $2,000 a month is what we were getting away with in the beginning. It's not quite the same anymore for a couple reasons.
Yeah, and now we're around 2,400 is what we figure. But now we have to balance that because we can't just up our budget. We had figured out what we needed or what we had available to us.
Right.
And so, we've had to adjust with other things like going to destinations maybe and balancing out the year in less expensive locations, doing more house sitting, just cutting down where we can so that we keep the balance in check.
Now, trying to balance that budget, raising it as much as we can, for our accommodations generally, but we have to live life a little bit too. We're doing this exciting, cool stuff. We want to eat out. We want to experiment with some of those local cuisines. We want to go on excursions. We want to do these things that you're supposed to do while you're in whatever location you're in. Now, we can't do them all. We understand that.
Yeah, pick
so
and
we
choose.
do pick and choose which ones we do, but we have added that to our monthly costs.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that we did change was, because we were so budgeted in the beginning, and we also kind of, I think, in that beginning time needed to prove to ourselves that we could do it within that budget.
We were very careful.
Yeah, we were very careful. So really for about the first year, we had to be so cautious of what we were spending. And then when we could see that, okay, we can fit it into our budget, we can also make changes throughout the year to adjust to make things work. One of the decisions we made, we didn't want to pass up, like you said, do an excursion that for something you're supposed to do in an area, that is, I don't know, just those things you're supposed to go do, right? And so we just told each other, it was like, we are going to go do those things. Like if there's something we really want to go do, we are going to make it work into the budget.
Right. You only live once.
You do only live once, yes. Now, the other area where we have veered and swayed and changed, and who knows if where we land will be where we land, is how many times we go home a year to visit friends and family. When we started, we had to adjust to the holiday schedule. So we had 2 stretches that we were out that were like 7 months long, so that we would be home at Christmas. And we actually missed Christmas.
We missed Christmas the first year, yeah.
And once again, this was a budget thing. Those flights home were not cheap. And so we've had to really change this.
We've changed it, and what we're doing now is we're going home 3 times a year. Now that does raise that budget again, that yearly budget, because there's an extra flight home each year. But we do feel like in the end, that will save us from potential burnout, seeing our families more often, maybe for shorter stretches, but 3 times a year rather than just twice a year.
Yeah, those longer stretches for me were incredibly trying. The 7 months was very, very hard. And then even when we would do the 5.5 months, that was hard.
Yeah.
I reached kind of the 4-month point and I need to get home. So this 3-month, I think I'm really looking forward to. We haven't started this yet. We start it this next time that we go home.
Right.
And so I'm really excited for it, because when you say goodbye for 2.5, 3 months, now with what we've done, it's going to seem like that time is it's so close.
Yeah.
It's not going to be as hard of a goodbye. So very, very looking forward to trying this new path and hoping it sticks. But if it doesn't, we'll pivot again.
We'll pivot again. But not only that, as far as getting home to see friends and family, it's just getting back to where you're from, the familiarity with everything around you. It's less work. Just plain and simple. When you're familiar with everything, it's just less work for your brain. And that's something that I always look forward to.
Well, and I think that's part of when you say avoiding the burnout.
Yeah.
When we're going home, that is also one of the things we very much look forward to, is that we don't have to think. We don't have to work every day at figuring out something new. You just know what it is. You know where you're going. You know what you're going to buy at the grocery store. It's just kind of easy.
Right.
And
we go home for vacation.
We actually do. We go home for vacation. And so, I think that it's a good way for us to make sure that we don't get burnt out, because nobody wants that to happen.
Now, what was the purpose of starting this podcast? For us, it was just to get onto a new platform and maybe have a conversation about our experiences instead of the structured video style that we kind of fell into.
Yeah, our videos on YouTube are pretty pointed. They're very direct towards a certain topic. We do a lot of budgeting, a lot of numbers, and I think that this gave us that opportunity to have more of this style of discussion, not feeling like we had to get to the point as quick as we were going to need to.
Right.
So we're enjoying that, and I think it was also just a new challenge.
Yeah, it was something that we hadn't thought about doing. And as soon as we did think about doing it, it took us about, I would say, 6 weeks of hard work to get it all figured out. A lot of the hard work was done by Carrie, just getting us onto the platforms and getting everything kind of dialed in.
Just figuring it all out.
Just
all new.
Once it was all figured out, we sat down and we put out, I think, 5 podcasts. and put them all out one day after the next. And we started rolling with it. How are we doing on the podcast? I don't know. I mean, you tell us. You know?
Yeah, I think number-wise we're doing okay, but I think that for us it wasn't even so much about that. It just gave us a platform, like we said, where we can have a little bit more of a casual conversation. And I think people had kind of requested that, to have it not be so directed, so our videos still have a little bit more of that feel, but the podcast we can kind of have conversation.
Yeah, and that's kind of evolved also. Since our first podcast till now, those have also changed. But we're just trying to adapt and trying to figure it out, trying to get better every day.
Now, why did we start a membership? This is a question we've had recently, because our membership isn't that old. We actually just recently started it. And people just kind of want to know what the purpose of it is. Now, when we first started, actually before we started traveling, probably 2 years prior, and we were looking at doing this lifestyle, something we were looking for was some kind of community to be part of. You can watch a YouTube video, you can get ideas of things, but we wanted to ask questions. And a lot of these communities that were out there, say the Facebook communities and stuff, they're so big. There wasn't any personal feeling from it, or actually getting to know people and have conversation.
Yeah, and what we have found on our membership page is we can answer these questions a lot easier, but our members are also answering these questions. They're not only answering questions, but they're coming up with places to go, experiences they've had, accommodations that they're staying in, things like that, where it kind of pulls everything together. So, if you see somebody's experience on YouTube, well, that's great, but if you hear it from a friend, it's even better.
Yeah, and we just also wanted to have an opportunity to have a platform where people had an opportunity to reach out to us or to other members for specific problems or concerns they were having, and to get conversation with how to fix it, what to do next, what somebody uses, just all those kinds of things that you don't necessarily get when you make a comment on YouTube.
Right. On the channel, you get very basic. In the community, you get the bits and pieces.
Get more in depth.
Yes. Now, this next one has changed for me just about every single time we head back out from our home. We're going back out, we're going to travel again. Like we just said, it's going to be 3 months at a time now. Every time we go back out, I pack a little bit differently.
Yeah, you're now becoming more organized.
Yeah, I'm becoming more organized.
Disorganization has gotten to amount for 2.5 years.
I'm growing up. I'm a big boy now.
You're a big boy. And I think that going home every 3 months is going to help that a little bit, because we're not having to maybe plan for as many different climates.
Right.
You're not having to take as many of those other essentials you might stock up on when you're at home. So I think that will be a little bit easier. But really, the one thing that has changed more than anything since we started was the realization that less is more. Way more. It's not, we get upset even with the small amount that we now travel with. We both will say on those days that we're packing and hauling, it's like, I have too much stuff.
Yeah, less is more. There's still things that I haven't worn in my bag now, and I've been doing this now for almost 3 years. I keep getting it less and less, and I still have things that I'm not using. So this next time out, I'm telling you what, I'm going to nail it. It's going to be perfect. Yeah,
I think the most frustrating thing is carrying around things that in the little bag that you have, taking up space, that you don't use. It feels so stupid, but if you really like that item, you don't want to just toss it and just get rid of it. So you want to take it home so you carry it for another 5 months. So yeah, it's best to go out with the bare essentials and then buy things on the road if you absolutely need them. Now, one thing that has definitely changed since we started traveling is our destinations. In that first year especially, like we said, we were budgeted, so we really had to focus on, even though we did start in Spain, we then followed that up with Montenegro and Albania, and tried to have a lot of those areas where we could save money.
Yeah.
So we've changed that balance
We've changed that balance quite a bit. And, honestly, that was a blessing in disguise, because there are some countries that are really cool that we wouldn't have gone to unless we were on a budget. So the fact that we were on a budget and we went to Romania, and Albania, and Montenegro, Bosnia, Serbia, these are cool countries with a lot to offer that we wouldn't have gone to if we weren't on a budget.
Kind of forced our hand a little bit.
Forced our hand, and so it's kind of a blessing in disguise, but Now we've gotten to experience Italy, Greece. So those things balance out the Italies and Greeces. Southeast Asia really helps a lot balancing your yearly budget.
Yeah, and that is where have made the biggest change, is that we still go to, these less expensive locations, but we have learned that we want to make sure that we are seeing those places that we for sure want to go see. So like recently we stopped, and it was only for 5 nights, but we stopped in Ireland. Very expensive place to be. We spent a lot of money in the 5 nights we were there. We knew that going in. We certainly weren't going to be able to spend a month there, but to be able to just go and experience that and then balance it elsewhere. So in our eyes, a lot has changed. When we look back at ourselves as the brand new on-the-road travel couple and where we are now, there have been so many different things that I don't know, just we've learned so well how to pivot, change, adjust our budget,
adapt,
do it all. Just adapt, really.
Just adapt. For me personally, it's become this lifestyle that I never, ever imagined that I'd be having. And I'm grateful to you. I'm grateful to Carrie. I pinch myself every day. But what a delight. If you have the means, the desire to do something like this, I suggest you go for it.
Yeah, I know one thing that I always said, when before we were going to travel, and people would ask us, "Are you sure? Are you sure? What if it doesn't work?" And I just remember saying to themselves and to me was, I don't think I was ever going to regret going and traveling the world for a year or 2 years or 3 years. So even if it hadn't worked and we had to go back and find jobs, I wasn't worried about that. It was just that idea that we would have had all these travel experiences that we wouldn't have had otherwise.
So we go out and we experience life.
Okay, well, we hope that you found this helpful, either if you are starting your travels, haven't started yet, just that realization that the plans you have right now and what they're going to look like maybe 2 years from now are going to be very different, and that's a good thing. If you would like to find us on other networks, you can find us on Instagram, Facebook, and on YouTube at Brian and Carrie, and then you can find us on our website at brianandcarrietravels.com.
If you would like to give us a thumbs up, we would appreciate it. If you'd like to join this channel and subscribe, we'd appreciate that as well. You can also join that community we talked about. We'll see you next week.
Cheers.